So I'm Janine Latus. I'm the author of this book, If I Am Missing or Dead, a sister's story of love, murder, and liberation. And this is me and my baby sister, Amy. In this picture, I'm 10, she's 5. As you can tell, Grandma had just painted our fingernails. We're wearing Grandpa's shirts and are about to do a song and dance routine for the family. Yes, my mother did cut my bangs. 2 years later, I was babysitting for a man down the street, and he came home early, and he pinned me down. And I couldn't figure out how to get away from him. But I did get away. And on the drive home, he tried to make me promise to never tell. He said it would be our secret. But the first thing I did was, I told, right? I ran up the stairs, Mom, Dad. And my mom looked at my dad, and I looked at my dad, and my dad said, never tell anyone or they'll know you're a slut. Now, which one of them harmed me? My father had a pattern of saying things like that. My chest was so flat you could iron clothes on it. My feet are so big it's amazing I don't quack when I walk. He was a master at gaslighting, that idea of telling you, you're exaggerating. I didn't say that. Where's your sense of humor? So I learned not to trust myself. I also moved out. I moved out of my family's home while I was still in high school. And one of my classmates and I got what was euphemistically referred to as a garden view apartment. You know, you're halfway underground and you're looking at the undercarriage of the cars in the parking lot, right? And we lived on tomato soup with popcorn floating in it. And I worked 2 jobs. I worked at a shoe store and a movie theater, which explained all that popcorn. So the drinking age where we lived was 18. And so one night, my roommate and I decided to go out to the Green Door Disco. And we were drinking, and we were flirting, and we were dancing to ABBA's, you know, Dancing Queen, young and sweet, barely 17. And at some point, I said, I need to head out. And so my roommate said, I'll catch a ride. Which one of us is in danger? So I went out to my white Pinto with the orange roof. Okay, those of you who are too young to know that, that was a very cool car. And I drove my car home, and I pull into my parking space, and I scamper down those steps to my apartment door, and I pull open the storm door, and I put the key in the lock. And what I didn't realize is that a man had followed me home from the bar, and he dragged me inside, and he raped me. And when my roommate came home, she found me curled up in a ball on the floor, and she helped me into the bathroom, and she helped me wash off. And we promised that we would never tell. We'd been drinking. We'd gotten separated. I couldn't identify my assailant. Everybody would know that I was a slut. I happened to be lucky. I happened to be resilient. And so I finished high school, and I went to college, and I went to graduate school. And while I was in graduate school, I was paying the bills by working in a hospital pharmacy. This was the period of time that my family refers to as me being a drug pusher, because I pushed a cart of medications down the hall. We have a really good sense of humor in my family. Anyway, I met this guy, and he was great. He was good looking, he was intelligent, he was a medical student, he had a trust fund, and he made me better. Like after a party, he'd tell me that my jokes actually aren't funny, and that I laugh like a hyena, and that maybe I shouldn't do that so much. Or I'd come down the stairs in my jeans and my hoodie, and he'd go, you're going out with me dressed like that? And so I learned not to laugh. I learned not to tell jokes. I learned not to feel comfortable in my own clothing. He made me better, right? Except he didn't make me better. He would say things like, nobody else is ever going to want you. Or, you're lucky I'll even go out with you. He made me smaller. He took my vulnerability, my fear that I'm not good enough, and he used it to control me. He built himself up by knocking me down. Now, you guys know this, right? That your partner is supposed to help you blossom into the fullest version of yourself you can be, right? They're supposed to say, what are your wants? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? How can I help you get there, right? They're supposed to make your life bigger. They're supposed to make you bigger. But my life got smaller. Like, I couldn't talk to other guys because that made him jealous. And my girlfriends, They're just a bunch of man-haters. And family? We're family now. Until my life was really small. Because, you know, abusers isolate, right? They make it so that you can't get perspective from anybody else. And the thing is there were warnings. When I was at his parents' house, his mother would scurry around and wait on her father. When she moved around, it looked like she was walking on eggshells. And our kids copy our behavior. So I shouldn't have been surprised when a month or so later, he and I went on a ski trip. And again, I'm a graduate student, so I'm poor. And he's a trust fund baby, so he's paid for our plane tickets, our lift tickets, our hotel room. And we go skiing, and the sky is blue, and the snow is white, and we stop for lunch, and we have a beer, and we stop later, and we have another beer, and then you're kind of that dehydrated, crabby thing, you know? And so we go back to our hotel room. And that's when I said the wrong thing. And he hit me. And he hit me again. And then he stopped hitting me, and he promised that he would never hit me again, that he was so sorry, and that he loved me so much, and he was just so sorry that I made him do it. And for 3 days, I had to stay with him because he had our plane tickets. You want them? Because that's what abusers do, right? They control the money, so they control you. Now, what I didn't take into account was that 5 miles away was my Uncle Tony. And my Uncle Tony is an Uncle Tony, right? He and my 7 cousins, they would have come, and I wouldn't have had a problem anymore. But first, I would have to admit that I was a battered woman, and I was too ashamed. So after 3 days, we get to the airport, and we're in the gate, and all of a sudden you hear, Janine, Latus, to the counter. And so I go over, and the gate attendant moves, and she was here, but she moves over here. And so now my back is to my boyfriend. And she says to me, are you okay? And I said, oh, this? I just skied into a tree. And she put her hand on me, and she said, no, honey, we've all been there. Is there any way I can help you? And I said, no, I'm fine. For the second time, to the same person, I could not admit what had happened to me because I was so ashamed. But when I got home, I called Amy. Amy and I talked all the time. We talked about movies, we talked about books, we talked about politics, we talked about absolutely nothing. And that day, we were just babbling on, and finally I said, hey, he hit me. And she said, he what? And I said, yeah, he hit me pretty hard. I think my nose is broken and maybe my ribs. And she said, well, you broke up with him, didn't you? And I said, no, I mean, it wasn't all his fault. We were tired, we'd been drinking. You know what a pain in the neck I can be. And my baby sister was super quiet. And then she said, are you gonna wait until he kills you? So I did break up with him. Fast forward a decade, I'm getting out of a painful marriage, and Amy's taking my phone calls at midnight, and Amy's taking my phone calls at 5 o'clock in the morning because she's helping me get out. Because I asked for help, and my sister helped me. And she had met her cowboy. She had met this cowboy. He had a cowboy hat and cowboy boots and a rodeo belt buckle, big gold chain around his neck with a gold cross on it, and he left her love notes. My sister Amy had been morbidly obese, so obese that walking up those stairs, up this ramp would have been uncomfortable for her. And in the preceding year, she had lost 85 pounds. And she had qualified for a mortgage, and she'd bought a condo, and she'd started graduate school in comparative religions. And she'd met this cowboy, and they would set the alarm clock for 30 minutes early every morning so that they could snuggle before she went to work. And I heard her say that before she went to work. And I said, doesn't he work? And she said, well, he has priors, but nothing bad. He's never hurt anybody. Like there was the time that he test drove a pickup truck and forgot to bring it back. And there were times that he wrote checks on accounts that didn't have money in it or checks that weren't on his own accounts. And then there were the DUIs. But again, he'd never hurt anybody. And you know how hard it is to get a job if you've got a record? And so my sister, whose heart barely fit inside her rib cage, bought him a pickup truck and a utility trailer and ladders and sprayers, everything he needed to set himself up in a house painting business. $60,000 worth of stuff. But hey, he left her love notes, right? It was the 4th of July, and I was talking to my sister. She had planted begonias. We were laughing because a few years prior, we were at our mother's house, and she and my brother had both planted begonias, and my brother had measured 4 by 4 inches and planted them each, and my sister had just dug a hole and plopped them all in one place. So we were laughing about that, and we were laughing about her baking bread in her bread maker that I had gotten her. And I said, "Are you guys going to go see the fireworks tonight?" And she goes, "We're going to make our own fireworks." And we laughed, and I said, "I love you." And she said, "I love you too." And we got off the phone. 4 days later, my big sister called, and she said, "Have you heard from Amy?" And I said, "No, why? What's up?" And she said, "I got a call from her boss. Amy hasn't been to work in 4 days." And I said, "He killed her." And my sister said, "I know, but we can't think that yet." And I knew we couldn't think it yet, because to think it might be true, and it wasn't true, right? She had gotten away. She had gotten in her car, and she was coming to us. And I don't know which one of us she was coming to, but we were calling brothers, sister, mom, cousins, friends, because she was going to get to us. And she still isn't here, and she should be here. So maybe she crashed. And if she crashed, then she's got amnesia, or she's in a coma, but we're going to find her, and she's going to be okay. And then we found her car. And then her coworkers found a note taped to the inside of her desk drawer at work. It was addressed to the county sheriffs, and it said, "If I am missing or dead, pick up Ron Ball." Ron Ball was the live-in boyfriend. It listed their debts, it described their fights, and it had a line in it: "I hope someday to find this and think it's funny, but if I don't let him get away with it." It was dated 10 weeks prior to when she went missing. For 10 weeks, she was scared and she didn't tell anybody. For 10 weeks, we talked about movies and politics, and she did not tell me that she was scared. She told one family member one thing, she told a friend that thing, she told another friend another thing, but she never told any of us the whole truth. And I believe that's because she was ashamed. I didn't save Amy. So I wrote my book to save other Amys. I wrote it because of something Harriet Tubman said. "I saved 1,000 slaves. I could have saved 1,000 more if they had known they were slaves. Because when you're in the middle of it, you don't always recognize it." My sister didn't tell the truth because she was ashamed of what was going on in her life. And I knew that this idea that what happens in the home stays in the home, that had killed her. I know that when a rape victim feels guilty and ashamed and doesn't come forward, the rapist goes forward to rape again. And so my message to you guys today is really simple. We need to talk. We need to tell our own stories, because by telling our stories, we give other people permission to tell their stories. I was terrified to tell people that I had been raped, that I had been beaten. It's frightening to take your family's story and drag it out into the spotlight over and over and over again. But I get the phone call or the email or the whisper at a party that last night or last week or half a lifetime ago, it happened to me too. And maybe it's not my fault. Maybe I didn't deserve it. I'm asking you today to go forth with your own stories and tell the truth. Because the truth is, we need to talk. Thank you.